around the nation, TYT Nation, like Waldo here. Welcome to the show. Got a great show for you guys today. It's Thursday. A lot of stuff to talk about, including Donald Trump's ridiculous threat to Erdogan. Fun times. As well as a little bit of an update on what's going on in Syria. So we might actually have some good news in relation to the Kurds. So that's good. We'll get to that. Then we have, of course, more insider stuff from the White House about the staff and some of his Donald Trump's calls to world leaders. One in particular had people all very, very concerned, and it's not Ukraine. So interesting stuff there. And then we've got a lot of segments about healthcare. So very, very interesting stuff. First, we're going to go after Pete Buttigiig for some of his lies when it comes to Medicare for All. Show a little bit of hypocrisy on the part of Mayor Pete. Then we have Joe Biden, of course, making a comparison between Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, comparing them both to Donald Trump. Disastrous. So we'll talk about that as well. And then we have an excellent article that I read earlier today. I'm going to share that with you guys. And it basically goes into the propaganda created by the health insurance industry to dupe people into not supporting Medicare for all. So I'm going to go detail that. And believe me, this is from a guy who actually worked on that campaign to try to spread propaganda against single payer. So that's really, really important. Then, of course, there's other stuff today. Mulvaney, of course. And these are not stories that I had prepared. But Mulvaney basically admits, yes, quid pro quo. And he does it in such a brazen way. Where he's like, what? We do it all the time. Quid pro quo. And they're just basically admitting their crimes now. And Mulvaney is deep into it. And then we also lost a civil rights icon today. And that is, look, it's really sad when death happens unexpectedly. And so it's just, yeah. So I'll get into that later, but let's get into something else first, okay? All right, Elijah Cummings. That's all I can say is he was a civil rights hero, an icon, and it's disastrous. The guy was a strong figure, bigger than life. And it's just it's sad. It's really sad. And he was also somebody who was very strong on impeachment. I sound like Donald Trump there, but it's true. He was one of the guys that was very, like I said, trying to lead on the impeachment front, and it's really, really sad. So okay, I don't know, man. It's just it's one of those days. All right. Anyway. Before we get into it, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. A lot of important stuff, like I said, we're going to talk about. Help, it really helps to share, especially, and so yeah, you can do that. Thank you. All right, we have a super chat, by the way. Let me bring that up from Sarge Tech. He said, I woke this morning to sadness. We lost one of the stalwarts of the civil rights movement, one who stood toe-to-toe with MLK on Bloody Sunday. Rest in peace, sir. Absolutely. Representative Cummings, like I said, a great man. And the House of Representatives will be missing him. Okay. All right. So let's get into the rest of the show. let's start out with some ridiculous Trump stuff. Yesterday, journalists were shocked when there was a letter, which apparently was written by President Trump to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who's the president of Turkey. So this letter was leaked by the White House. So, because of course, right? And so a lot of people, like I said, were wondering, is this a real letter? Now, turns out it's absolutely a real letter. And look, I'm going to go into why people thought that it might not be a legitimate letter here in a second. But it was proven to be a real letter by Fox anchor Trish Reagan. She said she had obtained the copy of the letter, Trump said to Erdogan on October 9th, as Turkey began its offensive in northeastern Syria. So that's just days after Donald Trump withdrew U.S. troops from the area, left the Kurdish people vulnerable. And so let me read some of that. It said, "Don't let the world down. You can make a good deal. History will look upon you favorably if you get this done in the right and humane way. It will look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. I'll call you later." That's just some of what the letter read. So in response to that, again, don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. Really? I mean, look, at least you got to give him some credit for trying diplomacy. But still, right? The childish way in this was written, and you can read the whole thing for yourself, and you could decide. But for me, the childish way that this was written shows that we do not have a mentally stable president. Now, Cristobal, host of Rising, excellent journalist, by the way, and she immediately was like, wait. Is this even real? This can't be real. No, totally real. Brian Klaas said, honestly, this letter from Trump to Erdogan would make more sense if it were written in crayon on line paper rather than on White House letterhead. Stupidity and childishness aside, I'm going to be honest here, at least the spirit of the letter wasn't bad. Now, there was a part of it where Trump had said, well, I don't want to destroy your economy. Okay, I'd leave that out. Not a good thing. Not smart, right? But okay, I would have left that out. Okay, so the letter was publicized shortly after Nancy Pelosi informed the press about Trump having a meltdown. So he had a meltdown, started calling the Kurdish people ISIS communists. Or, no. I'm sorry. He didn't call the Kurdish people communists. He called some of the ISIS fighters communists. Well, there's no proof of that. That's really, really strange. But okay. And so Nancy Pelosi walked away from that meeting yesterday because of the complete and total insanity. Again, Trump calling her a third-rate politician. Look, whatever. He's going to throw childish insults. She's going to leave. That's fine. It doesn't necessarily make her a strong person or a strong leader, I should say, especially when she actually won't vote on impeachment. So, real strong, Pelosi. Nonetheless, so we've got somebody who's super weak versus somebody who's an idiot and a baby. So that's what we're facing here in the government today. I mean, all right. So, but anyway, so now, this letter, like I said, comes out of Trump. It's a very strongly worded letter, right? And you know what happened when Erdogan received the letter? He basically crumpled it up and threw it in the bin. That's according to reports from Turkish sources. Took the letter, crumpled it up, threw it in the trash. I don't know if you laughed. That would have been appropriate. But look, here's the thing. They don't care what Donald Trump says. He can write all the strongly worded letters. And by the way, so can Nancy Pelosi. because she seems to be a fan of strongly worded letters too, and so they don't do anything. Now, I am kind of curious to see if Erdogan did take him up on the offer to call him. That's really interesting. Another call possibly locked up in that secret vault that we have all these foreign policy calls, and I'll get to those as well. But man, he's a clown. He's an absolute clown. Now, there is some good news, though, and it's not because of the strongly worded letter, but apparently the Turks have decided to do a ceasefire in the area to allow Kurdish people to leave. So let me give you a little bit of information on that. Um, so now, let's see. They had concluded negotiations because apparently there's some diplomacy going on, and that's great, to have a ceasefire. Uh, Basically, the Kurdish people would take down fortifications and get out of the area, get out of northern Syria, so they could continue their campaign against I don't know who. So, okay, we've got, I guess, a tentative agreement. Now, what's interesting about that agreement here is one of the parts of the negotiation that might have spurred Turkish agreement was has to do with the bank, has to do with the state-owned Turkish bank, Halkbank. Halkbank. So now, according to CNN, when we concluded the negotiations, the topic was raised, according to Pence. We informed them that this was a matter for the Southern District of New York. So Halkbank, right? Halkbank under indictment for apparently or allegedly violating Iranian sanctions or sanctions on Iran, right? So the Southern District of New York is looking into that, and they don't like that. And so I don't know. Maybe this has something to do with there. Maybe there was a possible call. Donald Trump and I don't know. Maybe you can impact the Southern District of New York investigation. Look, we heard what you did with Ukraine. So maybe you can help us out. I don't know. I'm speculating here, but it is really, really interesting. Again, the U.S. just indicted Halkbank on charges related to evading sanctions on Iran. That is like I said, a state-owned Turkish bank. So my guess might have a little bit to do with this decision, this sudden decision by the Turkish forces to stop bombing the area. As usual, it seems to come down to money and corruption. Okay. And all right. Let's move on. Now, President Trump has made quite a few questionable phone calls to world leaders. Ukraine is one of them. In fact, you have an impeachment inquiry based on one of those calls and how it was very concerning to some of the staff at the State Department and in the White House. So now we have another call that's led to a little bit of concern, I should say. According to former aides and members of the administration, one conversation left them, quote, genuinely horrified. Huh. Okay, well, that's interesting. So now, what call is that? Now, that would be the conversation. It wouldn't be the one with Ukraine, but again, a conversation with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. This happened in April of 2017. So now, what was wrong with the call? Why were people genuinely horrified? Well, during the call, Donald Trump congratulated the leader of the Philippines for doing a, quote, unbelievable job on the drug problem. Now, okay. So, look, if you're genuinely doing good policy when it comes to reducing the level of drug deaths and drug crime in your country, well, I mean that generally would be cause for celebration, right? Except in Duterte's case, his way of cracking down on on drugs was to basically murder everyone involved, whether it be drug users or people that have possession or sellers. Murder them all, kill them all. Oh, in fact, this drug war has killed over 20,000 people. Not 200, not 2,000, 20,000, according to the Human Rights Commission. Oh boy. Now, not only that, but during this, Duterte disregarded due process and human rights, literally killing people, like I said. And Donald Trump's over here saying, what an unbelievable job. Now, that is deeply concerning. And so now when people brought up this and was like, hey, maybe you shouldn't, I don't know, praise dictators for doing awful human rights abuses, that criticism didn't get through. In fact, at a summit in November of 2017, same year, Duterte and Trump only had praise for each other. According to Foreign Affairs Secretary Theodore Locsin Jr., Trump even compared Duterte to Frank Sinatra after Duterte sang for him during the event. You've got to be kidding me. What? Now, and in a Newsweek article in September 2018, the love was returned. Duterte was quoted as saying that, quote, that Trump, quote, speaks my language. Yes. Well, ain't that the truth? So the Washington Post also reported called Duterte was just one of many that Donald Trump made to world leaders who are either outright authoritarian or display authoritarian tendencies. And so it's not just, calling those people, it's how he talks to them. He said, you're doing a tremendous job doing this and you're doing that. Like some people might say, well, that's good diplomacy, right? You just butter them up and then you maybe make a deal with them. I mean, that's how we got meetings with Kim Jong-un, right? Kim Jong-un essentially played Donald Trump. He's wanted those meetings all along. And I'm not against diplomacy. I'm pro-diplomacy as long as we actually get something for it, something positive. And in the case of North Korea, we didn't get anything positive. In the case of Iran, it was completely negative. In fact, Donald Trump ripped up the Iran deal and has been asking to meet with the Iranians who are like, no, if you're not going to honor any of the agreements that we made previously, then what's the point of talking with you? Because we don't trust you. That's a fair enough criticism, whether or not you like the Iranian mullahs. So, but again, you have these calls with authoritarians where he sucks up to authoritarians. Not good. Not good. So now, other leaders that he called included President of China, President Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and of course, Erdogan. And look, support for human rights abusers aside, White House staff also feared that Trump would make promises he couldn't keep, endorse policies that the U.S. government would not support, commit diplomatic blunders that could jeopardize alliances or make deals in exchange for personal favors. And I'm pretty sure he's done just about all of those things by now. I mean, look at Ukraine. Ukraine's a good example of, right? Not only that, but you have China, right? So now, Jinping, President Xi, meets with Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump, and guess what? Her trademark approvals just happen to go through, despite having a trade war. Interesting. No wonder the Trump administration keeps going through the effort of trying to hide these phone calls on a secret server. But here's the thing that really bugs me about this, right? And it actually doesn't have to do with Trump. Let me give you a quote from the article. This is one former White House official. There was a constant undercurrent in the Trump administration of senior staff who were generally horrified by the things they saw that were happening on these calls. Among them, the official said, were phone calls that were embarrassing, huge mistakes. He made months and months of work that were upended by one impulsive tweet. So my problem is, if it's that bad, why not speak out? Why not gather other staff members internally and try to invoke the 25th Amendment? What? Why didn't they do that? Instead, they either quit or they would just leak to the press. And that's about it. That effectively does next to nothing. The staffers, however, will get the benefit of when Donald Trump is gone, come out and say, I was one that was against Donald Trump. The whole time I was sounding the alarm. Well, what good does that actually do? Hate to break it to you, but the alarm's been going off for about 3 years. And nobody's had the courage to actually do anything meaningful about it. I mean, if it's about, I don't know, trying to hand the Democrats reason to impeach or the power to impeach, remember who leads the Democrats. Nancy freaking Pelosi, who will do absolutely nothing. And so now, at this point, there's not many people left in the Oval Office, not many people left in the White House, I should say, in this administration that are not complete and total loyalists. And so these are the people back in the beginning of the administration when he started showing these signs of being authoritarian, etc. There was enough of a staff that could actually invoke the 25th Amendment. In fact, there was an article, there was an op-ed that talked about it. But they chose not to. They said, yeah, we're not going to actually do anything about it. Yes, we think this is bad. But even though we have the power to do something about it, to remove a sitting president, we're not going to do it. And so now those people, like I said, have been either fired or replaced by complete and utter sycophants who will never, ever betray Donald Trump. So congratulations on being incredible cowards for your own power and privilege. As Trump, of course, does what he's done to every single business that he's owned, and that's drive it into the ground. Fun times. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to take a break. We'll take some comments. I'll read those, give some shout outs, and yeah, we'll do that right after this break. So stay right here around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here. TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so we've got some super chats. I'm sorry, not super chats, member comments. One actually, Star Trek says, wait a minute, Trump wants to bring our troops home, then sends our troops to Saudi Arabia. Can't be trusted to keep his word under any circumstances. Sad. Absolutely. And so the whole thing of, I want to stay out of Middle Eastern wars is bullshit because, and I know, I don't normally say that, but it's true. He takes him out and then sends him right to Saudi Arabia. Why? What's the point? I don't know. But to be fair, he loves the Saudis because they go and buy his condos. And I'm sure the Turkey thing has nothing to do with business ties whatsoever. Okay, a couple more comments here. Mr. Elder says Kurds didn't deserve to be abandoned like that. The allied nation should carve out a piece of land for them to call their own nation. You know what? I actually do think that we should have split up Iraq into like 3 different countries, and the Kurds would have their own place to call their own. That would have been, I think that would have solved a lot of sectarian violence within Iraq. But of course, nobody listens to that. They think, and this is endemic of neoconservatives, right? Neoconservative idiots. They think, oh well, they're all the same. They're all Muslim, so they'll all just get along, and good enough, right? No. You actually have to be smart. You actually have to understand things, and that leads me to my next comment here. Jesus, love it. I think it's Jesus, but I kind of like Jesus. Jesus Christ on a cracker. Okay. Anyway, I'm having too much fun with that. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. Here she says, ISIS communists. What the fuck? The Taliban and Al Qaeda, who have similar ideology, were initially supported by the U.S. to fight the Soviet Union. ISIS is much closer to anti-communists than communists. Yeah, but you would you'd actually have to understand that and read about it. 2 things Donald Trump does not do: understand or read things. So, anyway, those are some of the comments here. Let me go into, let's see. There's some patrons, actually, I want to give a shout out to. So let's go here and do that real quick. Dwayne Godfrey, Edith Warden, Francis Carroll, and Francisco Saldana. So thank you to those people who support me on Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's one way to help the show. Another way is to become a channel member. We've got 2 different tiers now. We've got basic supporter, that's $2, and $4.99. So we're about $5. So yeah, let's see. Channel members of the day are Nellie Hunt and Christy Jackson. So thank you to those 2 for signing up. Also, there's some Q bounties. I will. Here's what I'm going to do on the Q bounties. I'm going to work on those this weekend. So we'll have those Q bounty videos for your questions. I will answer those on Saturday, and so I'll throw those up during the weekend. All right, and if you want to ask me a question, the Q bounty works kind of like a super chat, but when we're offline, goes to help the show. Ask me a question, I will make a video response to it, or even there's an option where you can send in a video segment, and I will watch it and react to it real time, and then address it. So those are kind of cool. Qbounty.com, OUNTI, Qbounty.com. So check that out. Link in the description. I may have just spelled that wrong. I don't know. It's one of those kinds of days. All right. So let's move on. Let's get into the rest of the show. Switching gears away from Donald Trump to Medicare for All. Okay. Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend is now a darling of the establishment, uh, especially now after he openly attacked single payer during Tuesday night's Democratic debate. Now, he's facing a lot of criticism from that, as well as praise from establishment media. So now, during this debate, what he did is that he ended up using right wing framing and talking points in order to attack Bernie Sanders' single player healthcare plan, right? So now, for example, he repeated the oft repeated lie that Medicare for all would kick 150 million people off their insurance. So, 150 million, that'd be about half the country would lose their health insurance. That's a pretty big claim. And of course, it's not true at all. So now, um, whenever they say that too, by the way, they don't say that it's going to be replaced by insurance. No, they're just going to take away your insurance, and that's it. You won't have any. You won't have any. So that's one. Another talking point is that it's a tax on the middle class. Now, look, right now, healthcare premiums are actually also considered or should be considered a tax on the middle class. Okay. Uh, Now, something that they don't mention is that you will have premiums, copays, and deductibles eliminated, and you will save much more money. This is according to all the studies, right? Another talking point is that it takes away choice from people, which I think is pretty absurd. Um, and so, again, he basically, when he was on the stage, presented all these falsehoods as fact. Now, Elizabeth Warren did a terrible job defending herself against that. And then Bernie Sanders, he said, no, I wrote the damn bill, and I know exactly what's in it. You are going to save money. Yes, there will be a small tax increase, but it will be offset by savings. And so, but look again, that's Buttigieg echoing right wing establishment talking points against healthcare reform, actual real healthcare reform that would make a better system. So now, some of the criticisms against Buttigieg came very quickly. For example, in a column on Wednesday, the week's Ryan Cooper argued that Buttigieg's two primary attack lines against Medicare for all, that it would increase taxes in the middle class and cost trillions of dollars, were incredibly misleading. And that's, of course, the other one, is that it costs too much. We can't do it here in America. We can do it everywhere else in the world. We can't do it here in America for some reason. Okay. So now Cooper wrote that it's very obvious why Warren refuses to describe Medicare for all as a tax increase in the middle class. And it is arguably more accurate for her to do so. What really matters here is that while Medicare for all would require some additional taxes in the middle class, those increases would be more than compensated by zeroing out premiums, copays, and deductibles. Buttigieg has claimed that Medicare for all would cost trillions of dollars, and that his incremental plan, which is called Medicare for all who want it, or really should be titled Medicare for all who can afford it, would cost less, was also false, according to Cooper. So now, Cooper points out that Buttigieg was likely referencing the study from the Libertarian Mercatus Center about how much additional tax revenue would be needed to finance Medicare for all. That came to about just over $30 trillion, according to what Joe Biden had said later on. So now that gets cited 30 trillion, 32 trillion, 34 trillion. Oh, it's going to cost this gigantic number, the trillions of dollars. And they present that as being added on top of what we already pay. But you got to understand that that's not true at all. And you can't present it in that way because it's absolutely false. Again, Medicare for all would cost $32 trillion over 10 years. That's about $3.2 trillion per year, right? You know what we pay right now? $3.4 trillion a year in our different various healthcare programs. And by the way, we don't even cover everybody. That's the whole problem. That's the whole reason that we're having this discussion on Medicare for all, universal healthcare, is that we have millions of people who don't have any insurance. And then you've got millions of people more who are underinsured in our current system. And the reason, and here's the thing, right? Underinsured basically means you can't either you have a crap plan that doesn't actually cover anything, or you can't afford your copay or deductible, so you don't ever even use your insurance. Disasters, right? So now, again, Medicare for all, universal health care, the spending would go down $2 trillion over a decade, right? Now, those savings would necessarily be less in more fragmented systems, according to Cooper, which would preserve private insurance like every other Medicare/Medicare for all plan that the establishment has come out with, which is basically a public option. Joe Biden has a public option. Buttigieg has a public option. Kamala Harris, public option. Um, and so you're not going to see that kind of savings under a public option than you would for a Medicare for all system. And you would still have private insurance. And I've explained before that the problem with the public option is that you would end up having old to sick people going to that public option and creating a death spiral. And so that's why a government plan is incompatible with private insurance. You just can't have it. And by the way, Cooper also points out that any of these other plans, when they're talking about cost, right, that actually be more expensive than actual single payer healthcare. And this is borne out by numerous studies that put Medicare for all, like I said, at $32 trillion over the next 10 years. Right now, if nothing changes, or if we have incremental change around the edges, our private insurance system would rise to the cost of around $50 trillion by the next 10 years. So now others went after Buttigieg as well. And I've got some tweets here from Representative Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna is a great progressive. He is 100% in favor of Medicare for all. And he said this. He said, the problem with Pete Buttigieg's Medicare, if you want it, is it won't bring down administrative costs of private insurers or maximize negotiation with big pharma and hospitals. And so understand that's where you get a lot of your costs, is that you have pharmaceutical companies that are able to charge whatever they want. You have hospitals that charge whatever they want, especially when you have hospitals that were created for profit. So these are the hospitals that do the surprise billing, that do, that even if you might be in your network, they have doctors in there that see people that happen to be out of certain insurance networks. And so you get hit with that surprise billing, and that's up to you. And so that can end up being a lot of money. So you get these ridiculous networks and in-network, out-of-network BS, along with your copays, deductibles, and premiums. And again, some people's deductibles are sometimes $1,000, $1,500, which means you have to come out of that, come up with that out of pocket before before your insurance even kicks in. And so that's a huge out-of-pocket cost. And so, and having insurance companies and hospitals, I'm sorry, not having insurance companies, having pharmaceutical companies and hospitals being able to negotiate directly with the government, and how much, especially if the government has leverage over them, that will save lots of money. And of course, also eliminating or reducing administrative costs. And that's another thing, right? So now Khanna continues in this tweet. He says, how you pay for Medicare for all would be taxing employers or rich corporations, and at worst, a premium similar to Medicare B. That premium is much less than what Buttigieg requires to pay, but Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have never used Republican talking points in saying Pete Buttigieg wants to raise taxes. He also said, Medicare for all will be far less expensive because it saves insurance and administration costs. It's not honest to ask Americans to pay for the system's private insurance costs and a public option gliding to Medicare for all, and then accuse Medicare for all advocates of lowering those costs of raising taxes. Give me a break. Now, he also addressed Buttigieg's claim that Medicare for all would infringe on freedom. Now, where have we heard that before? Again, Republican talking points, right-wing talking points. It's supposed to be a Democrat. Also, supposed to have been someone who respected Bernie Sanders so much that he wrote a column about him in college. Well, not a lot of respect there, from what I can see. Now, he said, let's see. Anyone on the debate stage last night who said Medicare for All is about taking away choice is being dishonest. Do they believe seniors over 65 on Medicare lack choice? Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All is about freedom and the pursuit of happiness. And of course, one thing that helps you be able to stay happy is having your health and also not having to worry about if you get sick or get cancer, how you're going to pay for it and how to not be financially ruined by this. So, and he's right. Like I said, Medicare for All, make sure that you are not tied to private insurance through your job. It goes with you everywhere. It doesn't go away. It covers pretty much everything, and it does it cheaper. I know it sounds like magic, but here in America, we're insane. We're used to insane medical costs for things that shouldn't actually cost very much. Like, for example, bags of saline go for several $100s. $1,000 bills for going to the emergency room and getting a freaking aspirin and a Band-Aid. It's complete and utter insanity. And the thing is, in America, we are used to that. I know. While the rest of the world, of course, stares at us as if we're living in the Stone Age. Well, when it comes to universal health care, we are in the Stone Age. And there are people there that are saying, oh, no, we can only do very, very modest reforms. We can go from bashing each other with with rocks to only hitting each other with sticks. Improvement. No, we're not going to do that. No, we need Medicare for all. So now, let me get to the hypocrisy of Mayor Pete. So he attacks Medicare for all, says it's awful, right? Puts out Republican talking points of why it won't work. Yet, not long ago, he might have been singing a different tune. Responding to a tweet here from the People's Summit, which asked, can you affirmatively say that we need Medicare for all now and that insurance does not belong in healthcare? Fairly straightforward question. So this is Pete's response. Gosh, okay, I, Pete Buttigiig, politician, do henceforth and forthwith declare, most affirmatively and indubitably, under the ages, that I do favor Medicare for all, as I do favor any measure that would help get all Americans covered. Now, if you'll excuse me, potholes await. So that's a tweet, not from 2012, not from 2015. No, this was last February. Mayor Pete. Now, to be fair, that was a very snarky / dismissive kind of answer. So, I don't know. You can kind of tell at this point, even though he might have said it, he wasn't necessarily in favor of Medicare for all. It's the guy who wrote the essay on Bernie Sanders. And now that he sees, and by the way, now he's running against Bernie Sanders, and now that Joe Biden is failing as the centrist candidate, well, now Mayor Pete sees an opening, and so this is what he does. He decides to take up the centrist mantle, proving that Mayor Pete is just another politician with zero values. Okay. All right. Moving on, let's go to Joe Biden, by the way. Now, former Vice President Joe Biden is stepping up his attacks against his rivals in the Democratic primary, specifically going after Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Now, he's talking to reporters about Medicare for all, and, of course, uses the talking point. This is a right-wing talking point, Republican talking point, that it's too expensive, we can't afford it. So now first, he goes after Elizabeth Warren, singles her out, says, look, I don't want to pick on Elizabeth Warren, but this is ridiculous. The idea that someone is going to be able to go out and spend what turns to be, if you add on everything that's going to be free beyond Obamacare, beyond Medicare for all, which is going to come out to about $3.4 trillion a year. Biden went on to claim that the $3.4 trillion estimate, which he did not provide a source for, by the way, is bigger than the entire federal budget. So that's complete and utter garbage. You know why? Because we actually have numbers. We believe in math. So let me tell you that the United States in 2018 spent on healthcare alone $3.65 trillion. $3.65 trillion is bigger than $3.4 trillion. You know how I know this? Because math. You should try it sometime. You should also try telling the truth. Now, the most conservative study that was done by the Mercatus Institute said that we would save $2 trillion over the next 10 years. Oops. So now that's if costs for our current system, by the way, don't rise, which they, of course, will. They are projected to. So that's Elizabeth Warren, right? And mainly Medicare for all. So now he's also going to go after Bernie Sanders on this. And I have some video of that, so let's take a look.
Bernie doesn't play for half his plan. He's talking about, 7% on a FICA tax out of your paycheck, another 4%. It doesn't even get you there. And we have to, look, the last thing the Democrats should be doing is playing Trump's game and trying to con the American people to think this is easy. There's nothing easy about it. If you're going to do it, tell us how you're going to do it. It's called truth in speaking. That's all it is.
It's called truth in speaking. And hey, does that involve the record players so that the kids can hear words? Yeah, asking for a friend. No, again, Biden, you should probably take your own advice and actually speak the truth. Bernie Sanders does lay out how he's going to pay for this plan. He does it in actually great detail because his plan is about 100 pages long. Look, so here's the thing, right? So they're gonna make up all of this stuff to use against Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who have voiced their support for Medicare for all. So now Elizabeth Warren, she waffles a little bit. Bernie Sanders says, I know exactly how I'm going to pay for it. I wrote the damn bill. Part of it is, yes, a small tax on the middle class. Now, that's something that we should not be running away from. Now, why is that? I know it's political consultants, their heads explode. Hair gets on fire. Oh, how dare you say we're going to tax the middle class? You got to understand that small tax is offset by savings for eliminating premiums, copays, and deductibles. In fact, all out-of-pocket costs would be eliminated. Gone. Whether you're sick today or whether you're fine today and sick tomorrow, come down with cancer next week, you are never going to pay anything out of pocket. That small tax will not go up. It is paid for. And so please stop with the lie. But here's why Joe Biden is doing this, right? Joe Biden is going down in the polls. Elizabeth Warren beating him in some polls in some states. Others have Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden all neck and neck in a three-way tie. As Elizabeth Warren rises, Biden falls. And now you have Bernie Sanders, who's making a comeback. And so the race is going to be Warren versus Sanders. Guaranteed. Biden, he's already starting to fall. And as Bernie rises, he will knock down Biden. Buttigiig, he's not going to rise to take the place of Biden. He will be in third, very likely. And so, look, Biden, we've already seen that Biden is falling. Why? He's not raising any money. In fact, even while he's going to very swanky, expensive fundraisers, he raised about $10 million less than both Sanders and Warren in the third quarter of 2019. You have establishment figures now that are worried like Michael Bloomberg, saying, well, if Biden falls, I will jump in to try to prevent Warren from taking the party too far left. Then you also have talk of Hillary Clinton possibly jumping in, which would be the worst idea ever. You have Buttigieg getting lavish praise on by the corporate media. And so you have all this saying that people are very, very concerned that Biden is going to fall. That's why all that other stuff is happening. And so now Biden, he's worried. And he's saying, look, I'm going to take the gloves off now. I'm going to openly lie and attack my opponents when it comes to their policy. That's what you do, I guess, when you're apparently behind. Okay. One more healthcare related story. I know we're heavy on this, but this is something that matters to me a lot as somebody who does not have insurance, who cannot afford private insurance, and has chronic conditions. Matters. It matters a lot. Okay. So let's get into it. So Medicare for All has been gaining a lot of attention during this election cycle. We've seen it brought up as a main topic in the Democratic debate. In fact, you have CNN commentators who are asking a lot of questions with, of course, establishment right-wing framing, as well as centrist candidates that are using that similar framing. So now Buttigieg, Biden, and Klobuchar, during this past debate on Tuesday, openly attacked single-payer healthcare. They said it was too expensive, unworkable, terrible policy, and their arguments, according to a former health insurance executive, are reminiscent of ones that he helped craft in order to preserve corporate profit and to dupe people into not supporting single payer. So now, there was an article written by Wendell Potter. So Wendell Potter is a former vice president for corporate communications at Cigna. It's a large health insurance company. And he basically, in this op-ed, shares a story about the fact that he came up with many of the arguments, he and his team, and these the companies that he worked for, the groups, I should say, that came up with these arguments that now both the right wing and corporate Democrats are using to attack single payer. So now, let me start out by saying that this was published in NBC News. So that's important, right? Because corporate media, he points out, plays a huge role in stopping any sort of health insurance or healthcare reform, right? So now he says that back when Hillary Clinton, way back in the day when she was trying to do healthcare reform, he began working behind the scenes to help craft a strategy to protect the bottom line of the health insurance industry by manipulating and misrepresenting Democratic will so that the public rejected the very policies that would deliver them the reform they sought. Those are his words. Now, he said he worked with the Healthcare Leadership Council. It's a group of CEOs. Well, not a group of CEOs, but CEOs created this group made up of big insurance, hospital, drug, and medical device companies. They formed this group together with the purpose to try to destroy any healthcare proposals that didn't keep the status quo or private insurance involved. They were obviously very successful back then, as Hillary Clinton never got her healthcare plan off the ground. And in fact, she soon after began essentially shilling for the health insurance industry. She was defeated, and now she joined their side. So now, thanks largely to the council's multi-pronged attack, writes Potts, which included lobbying by corporate chief executives and PR efforts to persuade reporters and television news anchors to use the industry's preferred language about the Clinton plan. So they used that back then. So they go to the media and they say, this is the language we want you to use. They say, yes, sir, will do. So the media working with these giant corporations in order to push a propaganda narrative. And so, does that sound familiar? Yes, it should. Because, look, every time there's been a debate, and Medicare for All has come up. It happened in 2016. It's happening now. You have moderators here from the New York Times, CNN, NBC News that ask questions from a right-wing narrative, from a right-wing framing when it comes to healthcare. Now, Potter said that after watching the first 3 Democratic debates and accompanying media coverage, he found that the industry strategy has been more effective in manipulating journalists and pollsters than he could have ever predicted. So understand that, right? So you have mainstream, and they call the media liberal, by the way. What a joke. They call it liberal, and yet here you have industry right-wing talking points that are being used so successfully that journalists just accept it as a, oh yeah, well, of course single payer would never work. Of course. So now this guy, after helping these companies come up with these ideas, he said, I feel compelled to speak up and set the record straight when so many politicians and journalists are using talking points that come straight from Health Insurance Central casting scripts. Now, he continues to write that the industry knows from years of focus group messaging testing that terms like socialized medicine and government-run healthcare scare many Americans, and that many of us respond favorably to terms like choice and competition. Based on this knowledge, there were several big lies I helped craft and that are still in circulation today. The first, he writes, is industry propaganda that duped Americans into believing that the free market can work in healthcare as it does in other sectors of the economy. So now I remember right-wing commentators would come out and they'll be like, what do you mean? Healthcare, it's like shopping for shoes. No, it's not. Not even close. And it's a ridiculous comparison to compare actual like or laptops. Actually, I think there was someone that said laptops to compare a consumer good to actual healthcare. Those things are very, very different. Okay, and so no, the free market does not work when it comes to healthcare. That's why you have 45,000 people or more dying from lack of health care. You have people that die because they can't afford their insulin. They can't afford their medication. That's why the free market doesn't work in healthcare. It works great when it comes to laptops and shoes and iPhones, and it should stay in those sectors, but not in healthcare and not in education. All right, so now Potts writes, U.S. healthcare is actually a classic example of market failure. For a free market to function, he explains, consumers need to know how much a good or service will cost them and decide whether to purchase it accordingly. And then he goes on to explain that when it comes to being able to make those decisions, you have to have price transparency. Now, anybody who's ever dealt with health insurance companies and hospitals and how much they come, basically what they charge for certain things, knows that there is no transparency in healthcare. You don't know how much things are going to cost. There's little transparency, and also it varies. It varies greatly among the different providers. Patients also, he points out, lack agency in the treatment that they receive. So, of course, that goes to the whole notion of, choose, right? You choose to have this particular procedure done. You choose the doctor, or you shop around to see how much it's going to cost. Well, he gives the example that an unconscious car crash victim, right? Well, when you're unconscious, you have no ability to decide on procedures being done to you or which caregivers are operating on them, whether they're in network or out of network. So, look, that's a great point. And yet, he points out that when they're revived, they're responsible for the bill. Very important point, destroys the argument about choice, right? What choice does a dying cancer patient have? Exactly. Now, a second argument is that it would result in a government takeover of healthcare. You guys have heard that before. It's a Republican talking point. They've been using it against the ACA for years. Now, it's not, of course, at all true. Now, there's another lie that was put forward by the group called the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, of which the Healthcare Leadership Council, by the way, is a listed member. They say that Medicare for all is one size fits all healthcare. Well, again, that's not true at all. Potter says the reality is that Medicare for all in the House and Senate would give people more options. That's because, unlike private health insurance, Medicare does not limit the choice of healthcare providers to ever-changing networks of doctors and hospitals. Again, something that I've mentioned before. So you can go to any hospital that accepts Medicare, which would be almost all of them. Not only that, but current Medicare for all proposals also provide a means of budgeting to ensure that all hospitals, including rural hospitals, which, by the way, one of the things in healthcare that is happening right now that doesn't get enough attention is that rural hospitals they don't have enough money. They're getting shut down. Now, on the other side of that, right, you also have hospitals that don't have enough money and are on the verge of shutdown, now suing patients. Every patient, whether or not you have a $2, bill that you couldn't pay, or a $2,000 bill or a $200,000 bill you can't pay. Hospitals have been aggressively suing people because they cannot operate. So now Medicare for all actually makes sure that they're able to stay open by funding them, right? So now finally, there's the other industry lie that Medicare for all would be too expensive and disruptive. The reality, Potter writes, is that the current system controlled and frequently disrupted by private insurance and aided by lawmakers over which they hold sway is the one that's too expensive and unsustainable. Americans, they say, spend more on healthcare than people in other countries because of high administrative costs. That cost, we've went over it before, but just as a refresher, 30% of our healthcare expenditures are a result of administration. Republicans, if you hate bureaucracy, well, then you should really not like private health insurance. Medicare for all, by the way, Medicare right now has 2%. 2% on administration. Now, private insurers, by the way, devote 17% or more of their revenue on average to administration. So now, so now those are the facts, right? Those are the details. So now Potter has a solution to it, right? So one, he urges all journalists, media organizations, and polling companies, but especially politicians on both sides, he says that they have an obligation to drop the insurance industry's framing. He said, there are much more accurate terms that can be used. These include referring more accurately to what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are proposing by calling it publicly financed, privately delivered healthcare. So, look, it's right. Under Medicare for all, you wouldn't have government-run hospitals. It would be publicly financed, privately delivered. Private doctors, private hospitals. All that would change is who is paying who. And that's it. So, again, the whole government-run smear, completely wrong. An absolute lie. Okay? So, now he also says this. You should ditch government-run and government takeover language because this isn't what they're advocating, and don't refer to what we have now as a free market system, since it's not. So now I doubt that any of the politicians who are against Medicare for all, who are paid for by the health insurance industry, for example, Pete Buttigiig, who's swimming in industry money, I doubt he's going to go, oh, you're right. Yeah, turns out I'm going to go start using that framing instead. No, CNN's going to continue to use the framing. MSNBC is going to continue to use that framing. All these politicians who are, taking bribes from the health insurance industry, they're going to continue using that framing. Now, what Elizabeth Warren, if she was smart, she would adopt the new framing, calling it publicly financed, privately delivered healthcare, calling it what it absolutely actually is. And so this is an excellent article. Again, this is a guy who worked there, who helped craft these talking points And he's saying they're all BS. They're all for health insurance industry profit. And they're crafted specifically for the purposes of propaganda. And this is a reality of our healthcare debate, by the way. Now, if we actually do want to have a conversation about Medicare for all, we've got to address the fact that these companies and politicians are lying to you, are lying to us. And they're doing so in order to keep the status quo because of the money. Okay. All right. That's all we've got for you today. Thank you, guys. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Also, consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation, or a channel member. You can do that by hitting the join button below, like and subscribe if you haven't already as well. And that's it. Thank you, guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you guys later.